Is because my balls was hot the best response ever to why do you have your pants off?
He had a lot of good quotes in that entire after fight interview.
Oh my gosh, that was so fantastic. I was texting a buddy, and if you don't know what we're talking about, it was the UFC fight before the McGregor fight, and he led it off with saying, because my balls was hot, and it gradually got better. The entire minute and a half,
Yeah.
interview from that. It was so great. So, yeah, I just wanted to start off with that. So, with that, let's get loaded. And with that, this is the Loaded Box Podcast.
Where we never finish first because our teams finish last.
That is true. And this is the Loaded Box Podcast. And we are your hosts, Ben Morgan and DJ Primo. And yeah, man, our team's lost, but hey, it's week 5 in the NFL already somehow. And yeah, it wasn't a great Sunday by any means for the teams that we cheer for. But hey, we fight through it. We're going to be there for you. We're doing our Instant Reactions podcast. Are you ready? I mean, if you're watching on YouTube, you just see all of DJ's stuff in the back there, and it's all Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers, and his kicker just decided to. What do you think? Did he bet the under? Did he bet on the Lions? What's going on?
I don't know. Even if because he hit the over at the very end. So he must have bet the Lions.
So he must have bet the Lions.
Oh. I don't know. I almost punched him straight in the dick today.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Packers. I'm excited to talk about the Packers. But
I'm not talking.
Let's lead it off here with the Buffalo Bills. They beat the Tennessee Titans 13-12. What do you got?
Next.
Yeah, and my instant reaction is pass as well. So let's move on to the next
right
one.
off the bat.
Let's talk about the Browns. They played the Ravens. They won 12-9 in the Thriller. What do you have for that?
My single syllable here is after a single syllable actual one with next. It's inconsistent. The Ravens may be the most inconsistent team ever, and I keep hearing people like Coward and other people like that saying how they're like this unknowing, like people don't realize that they're a good team, sneaky good team, but then they have this games like this. And then, who else did they play? I can't remember.
Where they scored 9 points against Cleveland.
Yeah, they just played terribly.
The Raiders
they're just
put
not
40 against them.
They're not good. They're just, they're like a cock tease in my eyes. It's like Joe Flacco is bad to throwing interceptions in the red zone. And this, like, you can't count on the Ravens. I'm almost willing to say that I'd go around those naked again if they make the playoffs, because they're not making the playoffs. They're not good.
No, I agree with you. My single syllable for this one, and I'm copying you from last week. I'm upset because I really wanted to see a team with 2 ties in the first 5 weeks, and we were an ugliest game-winning field goal I can recall.
That was awesome.
Oh my gosh! As soon as he kicked it, I'm like, was that blocked? Did he miss it? Like, what happened there? But somehow it went in, and yeah, I mean, Browns get the win in Baker's home debut. They said after that game it was the first time the Browns had won a home game on a Sunday since since after Christ. I don't remember what the exact date was.
It's like 1,000 something days.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was terrible, and it was just kind of just a really probably a boring game to watch throughout. But then Baker leads them down for that last drive, and they get into field goal range, and he goes for 340 plus and a touchdown. And I was a little nervous about him and that entire offense in that game, and it proved to be pretty true. But he got an entire other quarter basically to add to those stats. But I think moving forward, you can feel somewhat comfortable, like depending on the matchup. I think you can feel kind of comfortable with Baker. I like what I see in that kid.
Nope. Not at all. He's going to continue to throw interceptions and make dumb mistakes. It's not all there. I honestly think Tyrod could be doing this, but more.
No, I don't think so. I think
100%.
I didn't see Baker's interception today, so I can't really talk too much about the one that he threw. But just based on what I did see from that game, he just provides so much more. And that Ravens defense is good. Like, I don't mind that Ravens defense at all. It's a little inconsistent, but it's not a bad defense. So I think if he can do 340 yards against them, man, he's not going to have too many other issues. He's still got to pay attention to the matchups a little bit. But obviously I like Baker. I'm the Baker fan club president, as you are for Tyrod. So.
Yeah, I won money on them. That's the only good thing that come out of this.
Hey, there was good that came out of it yet. Well, let's move on to that game that we started talking about right away because the Lions beat your Packers 31-23. What do you got here?
I said the same thing last week. It's the same single syllable here. Sloppy. Sloppy again here. You can't start so slow and fumble the ball in your own territory and put your defense in bad positions and then miss 4 freaking field goals and an extra point. Like, we lost by 8 points, I think it was, and missed 4 field goals. That's 12 points.
That's math, baby.
They essentially gave up 30 points that it was ridiculous. And then Mark McCarthy not playing. It's just like a product of really bad coaching because when you're starting that slow every single year, you just aren't coaching well. It's like Aaron Rodgers has to go. At first, they ran a quarterback draw on a 3rd down in like 4. I thought it was a quarterback draw. I was like, wow, that's Mike McCarthy's best play ever. But they showed the replay. 100% wasn't a quarterback draw. Rodgers just decided right after the snap, like, dude, this is wide open. I'm going to take the first down. Only Rodgers could make that decision. He's a better offensive coordinator, play caller than McCarthy. This is just all so. They'll get it together. They will. I'm not worried about that. They had a lot of young wide receivers out there. The defense, they did what they could with where they were, the positions they were put in. But I have confidence still. That's 100% fact because they still put up 1 million yards.
They did.
In the second half, but they just can't keep starting the first half not scoring points. You can't just keep doing that.
I didn't realize how many gray hairs Mason Crosby had on his head, and I don't know how many more he added after missing all those field goals, but there are a lot of pissed off people here in Wisconsin. Holy cow. Mm-hmm. My single syllable here is saxophone, because that's what our boy Kenny G plays, because Kenny Galladay, man, every time I was watching that game, he was making a highlight play. He had 4 catches, 98 yards, a touchdown. From what I saw from that game, it looked like it could have been more. Like, it looked like it could have been 2 touchdowns, 150 plus. He's working his way into must-start territory, despite the fact that you probably have other receivers that you drafted higher than him just because of how late you got him in a draft. And they're probably good receivers. But you're to that point now where Galladay's kind of one of those guys where not even depending on the matchup anymore, he's just a guy you got to plug in. What did you think about it? You saw the whole game today.
Yeah, I said going into this game, I specifically remember saying that the Packers were going to dominate, and that if you were going to use a wide receiver in this game, I said use Kenny Galladay, which turned out to be correct, and he almost had a long touchdown earlier if it wasn't for a penalty. The other thing I was going to say about this fantasy thing is, I'm an Aaron Jones owner, and watching Mike McCarthy be the worst, decision maker of all time, 7 carries again for 40 yards. He's taking a page out of the Adams Gase book right now. Adam Gase book. He's only ran it 20 times, and he's got this running back who, there was one drive. They ran it 5 times in a row, and he just kept busting off big runs. And then they took him out, put in Jamal Williams for 3 straight plays, and threw it 3 straight times and didn't get a first down.
Right.
It didn't make any sense. It made 0 sense.
Yeah.
And then they missed a field goal.
Well, why wouldn't they? I mean, that's what they did on all their drives.
It was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. This guy literally... They had the right idea. Just keep handling the ball. He's the playmaker. He's their best running back. The Lions can't stop the run.
Right.
And we only ran it 20 times against this team. That's ridiculous. Just whatever. Yeah.
It's not part of my instant reaction, but I wanted to also ask, because this is the first time you probably got to watch a whole Lions game. What did you think of Kerryon Johnson? I got to see a little bit. It looked like they were feeding him early, but then I think he still only ended up with 12 carries.
Yeah, they don't really use him that much, it seems like. Yeah, he did get 12 carries, but it's he got a carry and then he was out, and then Garrett Blunt's getting the goal line carries, so that's going to be annoying all season long if you're playing him, because you got 7 points and no touchdowns because
Blunt.
Patricia is putting Blunt on the field because it's
he
freaking.
Stole 12
he thinks he's the Patriots,
right.
For Christ's sake, coming over there. So it's kind of a shitty situation to be with it because you want to play him because he's playing well, but you can't trust him to get the ball. They're going to throw the ball. They only threw it 26 times today. But usually they're going to throw it more. Yeah, it's just not a lot of faith. And
just like you said, Blunt's the ultimate goal line back there. So, Kerryon might be in just depending on a random situation down the line. But, Blunt more often than not is going to get that work. And that's going to be frustrating if you use Kerryon Johnson. I was one of those guys today. So, let's move on to the Chiefs beating up on the Jaguars 30-14. What do you have here?
My single syllable here is fluke. Wet conditions. Neither quarterback really played well in this one. Mahomes had 2 interceptions, no touchdown passes after getting off to a blazing start, so he came back down. And, of course, Blake Bortles had a tough game, but it was wet. You know, it happens. He's playing on the road. Wet conditions. I'm putting 0 stock in this game. You know Blake will come back next week like he does every other week and probably put up like 400 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Whatever. Not a big deal.
So this is part of what I was going to say for my instant reaction, and I'll get into mine. But, all right, so you said, like, oh, Blake will bounce back, whatever. Was this not the ultimate game for him to go off for, like, 350 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns and put up 30 to 40 points like every other team has been doing against the Chiefs this year?
Well, actually, he had 430 yards, a passing touchdown, and a rushing touchdown.
And he ran one, yeah.
Yeah, so suck it.
All right, I'm sorry, but that's fantasy, and that's all great. But at the end of the day, he still threw 4 interceptions against this defense, and one of them that I saw is wet. The one I saw was a screen pass that he threw right to the defensive lineman.
So Tannehill did the same thing, didn't he?
We'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything that I just said, my single syllable was lie detector test. Because this was the game where Bortles and the Jags should have got it done a little bit offensively at least, and they really didn't. The last 7 points that they scored on Bortles' rushing touchdown, that's garbage time. I don't even want to talk about that.
It was wet,
this was the game where they needed to do it, and it's wet. All right, that you can have that. It's wet comment, but I'm done. I don't want to talk about Bortles anymore.
He had over 20 points still. It's not like he didn't put up some good numbers for you. You're refusing fantasy-wise.
All right. I understand that fantasy-wise, he did Blake Bortles garbage time, and that's all fine. In my scenario, I was talking about real-life football where the defense is good, and it's not like they gave up a ton either. Like you said, Mahomes didn't throw a touchdown pass, I don't believe.
It was what?
The Miami Dolphins lost to the Cincinnati Bengals today, 27-17. What do you have?
My single syllable here is lose-lose. No matter what I do with Drake, and that's not a Drake song, it's not going to be the right decision. So I'm just, like, regardless, I'm keeping him on the bench unless buys cause me to have to play him. Because they still only ran the ball 22 times. Only 6 with Drake because God knows why. It doesn't make any sense. He is similar to Aaron Jones as a running back. They have very similar styles, I think, and they're just not getting used appropriately. Both very good backs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to account for that. The way they use him, it's not going to account for reliable numbers from game to game. Because if you're going to rely on him to be catching a freaking post play, like a wide receiver out there in the corner of the end zone, just not going to happen from game to game. Or a flag play, a corner post, or wherever the hell he ran. I don't know. I just saw him in the corner of the end zone. Yep. I thought it was a wide receiver. By the way, I was all confused when he was doing that far down the field.
Well, it was funny when you texted me and you're like, damn it, Drake, I can't get it right with that guy. And I text you right away, like, don't get used to that. The Dolphins don't run that play. Like, that wasn't the Dolphins' real offense. Come on, like, that shouldn't have happened. So,
I didn't even look at his stat line. 6 for 46. He had 7.7 yards per carry.
Yeah.
And they didn't even use him.
The bulk of the carries were going to Gore. Like, then they were running the ball pretty effectively early in the game. And then once Laramie Tunsil went out and they got behind, it was over. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, I have Drake in a couple of leagues, and I'm to the point where, yeah, if he scores, it's great. But, yeah, it's not going to be consistent. It's not going to be consistent at all. And I don't want to put that guy in my lineup right now.
Leaving wide receiver today.
Well, yeah, a lot of checkdowns at the end, too. My single syllable for this one was horizontal because Gase's offense is just horizontal trickery at this point. That's all it is. It's not a sustainable offense. You used to give me shit all the time about the Broncos with Tebow. They were winning. They were like having all these late game comebacks, but you're like, dude, that's not a sustainable NFL offense. You can't make your living off doing that. That's what we're seeing from the Dolphins right now. I did a little bit of math after that game because I was so pissed off.
Math.
I did math.
Ben did math after this game because he was so angry.
When I get mad, I do math problems.
He's so angry that he sat down and did some math. Fucking geese, I'll show you.
We should end the podcast right there. That's a good line.
Jesus.
So this year, 64 of the 99 points that they've scored have been with real offense. The remaining 35 points, which is a pretty good percentage of those, are either off special teams touchdowns or gimmick plays. This offense is okay when it has a lead, but Adam Gase does not call an offense that you can consistently get yards and points with, especially if you're down in the game. I like Adam Gase. At least I thought I liked Adam Gase. What I think I might have fell for was the fact that the coach before was Joe Philbin. And Joe Philbin was so bad that any improvement was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever seen. But just because something's better doesn't mean it's the best. And honestly, the way things are going right now, this sounds like I'm just jumping ship. They're still technically tied for first place. They need a new coach. They need a new quarterback. Like, I'm sick of it. It's unbelievable.
You can't win just running gadget plays constantly. That just seems like they're getting either return touchdowns or just running stupid plays that are somehow they've worked, but obviously haven't in the last couple of games because that's just going to fall out. Because if you're just trying to trick people constantly, it's just going to turn over to turnovers and lack of productivity. And did this guy coach in the Canadian Football League at one point? Because that would be the only thing that makes sense to me, that he runs these plays all the time.
At this point, I hope he just goes there. I need to reboot. Like, I want to just restart. So, I don't know. I'm in this weird wall.
The offense doesn't make any sense.
No, I'm with you. Let's move on here to the Jets beating of the Broncos. Jets win 34-16. What do you got?
My single syllable here is west to east. The Broncos play terrible when they fly out east. I bet this game as well. Actually, I didn't do very good this week, but every game I bet outside my 3 that I gave everybody else, I won. So that was pretty wild. I went 1 and 2, so there's a little bit of fallback finally, but it'll go back to undefeated later. But anyways, so they did the same thing against the Ravens a couple weeks ago here. They flew out east, and then they sucked. They just don't like going out east. So if you're degenerate gambler like Ben and I here, and you see that the Broncos are flying out east, fade the shit out of them. Fade them hard, because they're going to lose that game, and they're going to lose pretty handily, apparently.
Right.
Because, I mean, it's not like the Jets are a great team.
No.
They just got Sam Darnold.
Right. So before the season started, we had Ben Albright on, and you and him debated back and forth, primarily about Case Keenum. That's kind of how that podcast started. If you could say one thing to Ben Albright right now about Case Keenum and the Denver Broncos so far this season, what do you think that you would say to him?
Case Keenum is bad. That's the whole thing said. I said, Case Keenum is a bad quarterback. Except for the fact that he's just bad. He's bad. He's not a good quarterback. He had a lot of yards today, but they're just not. He's not that type of quarterback, and you can see that. If they can't use him effectively the way the Vikings did, he's not good. He's not the put it on your team and drop back and do stuff quarterback. But he's throwing enough, he's going to have some numbers that look good on the fantasy stat line.
Yeah, I thought about asking you before we got on if we wanted to try to bring him on for a little just to see how he was feeling about the Case and the Broncos.
I see him tweet about it. He still thinks Case Keenum's not the issue at all.
We'll have to get him on sometime.
Well, they have no running game. That's fact.
Right. Oh, that is a fact right
Their
now.
Their offensive line's bad.
They struggled. My single syllable from this one was, will you go back out with me? Because you remember, thank you. You remember back in like middle school relationships, you'd say that you were dating and then you'd break up and then, can you go back out with me?
I was just hit it and quit it all the time in middle school.
Boom, middle school hitting and quitting.
Smash it.
Yeah.
Next.
No, because I want to talk about a waiver wire.
No, that's what I was doing in middle school. Smashing it and say next.
Sorry, I failed to pick up on that. Hungover.
Okay.
So a lot of people that had Robbie Anderson dumped him. And now he put up only 3 catches, 120 plus yards, 2 touchdowns. Do you think those owners or other people are going to be like, oh, hey, we got to look, we saw this big game, we got to add him back? Like, do you think he's going to be a top waiver priority this week?
I don't know. 3 catches for 123 yards makes me nervous about adding a guy. That's like
last week's Nick Chubb.
Not Carlos Hyde, Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
Did you just say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like Nick Chubb giving 2 carries for 103 yards and 2 touchdowns or whatever. That's like, and then this week he did nothing, so I wasn't jumping back on it then. I'd still be more inclined to get him just because he is the top wide receiver and have him stashed based off a matchup, but I wouldn't be like super overly excited about him because that stat line is kind of crazy.
Yeah, the stat line, like, it's eye-popping because of the 120 yards and the touchdown, but yeah, like 3 catches is a little scary. The one thing that I would probably say that's working in their favor is as the year goes on, I could see him and Darnold finding a little bit more chemistry. I think Darnold will continue to improve a little bit, so I think that could help out a guy like Robbie Anderson. So yeah, depending on how deep your league is, he's probably not a guy that you're going to pick up and start right away. So I wouldn't go crazy on him on the free agent wire with your free agent money or anything. But I wouldn't mind him if you need a deep stash at wide receiver. So side note on that,
I'm gonna go crazy on you.
we're gonna have a lot of musical references in this podcast just coming up.
Oh yeah,
Real quick spoiler. Side note: Isaiah Crowell 219 yards and a touchdown on a lot of benches this week. I bet.
Powell had 99 yards too.
Did he? Oh
yeah.
My gosh. Let's skip ahead here to the Steelers and the Falcons. Didn't really see this one coming. I thought it was going to be high scoring, but I thought it'd be a little bit more balanced. Steelers win 41-17. What do you got?
Questions? Matt Ryan just can't get it done.
Sounds like
I say
Blake
this
Bortles.
year after year. He can't get it done. Period. Point blank and the period. Tampons. He can't do it. All these weapons, and he puts up 17 points against a defense that you would think he's going to shred the way that secondary's playing, and the weapons he has with Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, Sanu, you would think that he was just going to be bombs away.
Freeman back.
Yeah, Freeman's back. He's got Coleman. You think he was going to be throwing just bullets everywhere, putting up points, endless number of points. You saw the Steelers scoring. I thought the Falcons would be scoring 40 up there with them. This is why you can't trust this guy in fantasy or real life. He's dead to me. End him.
He's dead to me. All right, so I said that we're going to have a music spoiler here. So, because my instant reaction is stacks on stacks on stacks. Big Ben and AB, man. Big Ben goes for 250 yards, 3 touchdowns. AB goes for 6 catches, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think the Antonio Brown owners finally received the production that they imagined taking him. He was going between 5th and 7th or 8th in drafts. And over the last 5 years, man, the guy's putting up 1,500 yards, double-digit touchdowns. And he's been fine this year, but he hasn't had that boom week, and we finally got it. So I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think this is what they needed? They just needed a jolt to get there, and we're going to see the momentum carry? Or was it a product of Atlanta's defense being completely banged up and giving up yards and points to everybody?
I mean, I just think it's kind of what you see with Big Ben and Brown at home. They have these games where Big Ben kind of goes off, and then AB has a huge game. You kind of see it every year. It's not like it's out of the usual. They'll come back next week or whatever. Let's see who they're playing. Let me see who they're playing real quick. They've got the Bengals on the road. They'll probably put up a dud because they're playing on the road, and that's just what Big Ben does. Think about this, though. The Steelers, the Packers, the Vikings, and the Browns are all 2-1. Isn't that weird?
That is wild.
That's just wild to me. There's 3 good teams and 1 team that never won before, ever.
No kidding.
It's 2-1. That's crazy.
Nice assumption there. And it's funny that they involve
Le'Veon
a tie.
Bell back, though. They're going to get a huge jump from him after putting up a game like that. So that'll be exciting to have him back.
Yeah, that is true. Let's move ahead to probably the most exciting game of the day. The Carolina Panthers, last second, long-ass field goal, beat the Giants 33-31. What do you got?
Capital E-L-I, unreliable.
So unreliable with a big Eli in the middle.
Exactly.
Nailed it.
The Giants trust Eli so little, they let Odell Beckham throw the ball to Saquon, and it turned into a touchdown. They are literally taking the ball out of Eli's hands. They're actually like, nope, just give it to somebody else. We'll let him throw it.
Right.
He should be benched. You remember when he was benched last year? McAdoo was criticized so hard. I think he was right. With all these weapons, this team needs to be better. They need to be better with Evan Ingram, Sterling Shepard, Odell Beckham, Saquon Barkley. They need to be better. They actually have a solid defense, usually in general, but you can't. Eli stinks, so they're taking the ball out of his hands and let Odell Beckham throw the ball.
Who would have thought that Saquon Barkley's first ever receiving touchdown would have been thrown by Odell Beckham? 1, that's amazing. 2, this kind of reminds me of, remember last year when we were talking about Julio Jones not scoring touchdowns? And guess who threw him one that 1 week? It was Mohamed Sanu. We're like, oh, that's all they needed was a change. So it kind of sounds like you're putting the Giants and the Falcons in the same kind of basket there.
Exactly. Except Eli is even worse than shitty Matt Ryan. So.
All right, so you said something in your instant reaction. You said that with those weapons, they need to be better. And that plays in perfectly to my single syllable because mine is Labor Day weekend. because Labor Day weekend, we did our season predictions podcast. We both said that the Giants would be improved this year and that they have something to build on, but they would be lucky to win about 7 to 8 games. Because if you looked at that schedule and went through game by game by game, they had such a difficult schedule. They still have offensive line issues, still had a couple question marks on defense. And people are going crazy over this 1-4 start. We're forgetting, though, they had the second pick in the NFL draft. They weren't good last year. They weren't just going to turn this around overnight. You need to have patience. They got a stud in Barkley. OBJ is likely to, usually when he gets touchdowns, he starts to get them in bunches. He's going to be just fine. The schedule's going to get a little bit easier. The wins are eventually going to come. They're not going to make the playoffs. No one really thought that they were ever going to. So this 1-4 start shouldn't worry anybody. I don't know why we're freaking out over it right now.
I mean, your schedule doesn't get easier when you're a shit team. It's just always hard. But that's the only response I have to that. You can't say your schedule is going to get easier. When you're shit, it's always a hard schedule.
What I'm saying is the quality of the teams. They've played some difficult teams. They're not always going to be playing the Saints. They're not always going to be playing the Panthers. They're going to end up having some easier teams. They get to play Washington at some point. That's not a great team. They get to play the Cowboys a couple of times. That's not a great team. They're going to have some winnable games moving up. They had a really hard – remember going through the schedule and saying, holy shit, Giants are going to get off to a rough start. Why are we surprised now?
A lot of teams are saying that about them. Shit, we got the Giants coming up. Thank God. It's a winnable game.
Well, regardless, I'm just saying we shouldn't be panicking at all.
I am. Not because I don't care that much. He sucks, though. Period. I don't care who he's playing. He sucks.
Before we get into the late games, let's talk a little bit about Pristine Auction because they've got daily auctions packed with tons of stuff for the man cave. They guarantee their items. They all, asterisks, come with certificates of authenticity from only the trusted sources. It's also affordable. A lot of people don't think you can buy a bunch of autographed memorabilia, but trust me, it's more affordable than you think. It's quick and free to register. It's free to bid. You only pay when you win. Make sure you mention the Loaded Box Podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section when you register. Head over to Pristine Auction. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see what just came in the mail not too long ago. We got a Hall of Famer from the Miami Dolphins. We ain't going to see another one of those for quite some time in Jason Taylor there. So you yourself can get some autographed memorabilia from your favorite team as well. Head over to pristineauction.com today. And with that, DJ, let's head off into these afternoon games. We had the Chargers beating the Raiders 26-10. What do you have for this one?
You're fired. They probably won't fire John Gruden this year, but when he loses a bunch of games next year, I think that they will. Because you're just giving this guy way too much money to lose a bunch of games and make terrible personnel decisions. Just too much money. I think Gruden's whole, whatever his philosophy coming to this year was the dumbest they've ever seen. It's just let's get the all, I can't believe they don't have Franco on their team. Let's get the all, retirement team. Maybe they'll be the youngest team in the league next year because all their guys will retire and they won't have anybody besides, rookies.
Right.
At next point, maybe that's his goal. It's let's get a bunch of old guys in here. Look really bad, and then we'll have a bunch of young guys coming up behind them. I don't know. But this was my fear about the Raiders coming into the season, and it's been validated completely through these games.
Oh, absolutely. I have another musical single syllable here because it's back to life, back to reality.
God, you're a terrible singer.
I was really good, I thought.
Oh, God.
The Raiders had that wild win last week. They scored 40-some points, spoiled Baker Mayfield's debut. Then they go on the road in a divisional game, a game that they need to, obviously get 2 wins in a row. This one, they all come for the same, but, obviously divisional games seem to mean a little bit more. And you scored 10 points. We questioned the Raiders offseason. During the actual offseason, we're what are they doing? They seemingly got older. They still have Marshawn Lynch. They bring in Jordy Nelson. They get Martavis Bryant. They cut Martavis Bryant. They bring him back in. They traded away one of the best defensive players in Khalil Mack. What are they doing? Trying to figure out what the end goal here is for Oakland. Did they really think they were going to compete this year? The team just seems so poorly built right now. Outside of Derek Carr and Amari Cooper, where's the youth? Where are the people that you're building around? And even if you're building around them, what have they really shown recently to say, hey, that's the centerpiece and what we want to be building around anyways? they just don't look all that great to me. And I think I got bluffed by them a couple of years ago, and I'm basically to the point where I want to write them off.
Two things. Did you see how they ran? They were at the 1 yard line when Marshawn Lynch decided to throw it. Then Carr threw an interception to Melvin Ingram.
Yeah.
And then I saw a video going back to Derek Carr talking about Marshawn Lynch and how he won't throw it on the 1 yard line. He'll hand it to Marshawn. And then that happens.
Why does that always happen to Marshawn Lynch teams? Like,
he was like screaming as he walked off the field when that happened. Number two, is Martavis Bryant going to be worth somebody to stash on your team as a deeper wide receiver? Because he seems to find some openings.
I know. And I'm in a couple of leagues, actually, where I noticed some people do have him stashed right now. So if he is available, I'm like, I mean, maybe. You might want to take a chance at it. But yeah. And the thing is, like, too, with the Raiders, the way that they're playing right now, they're going to be playing from behind. So we know that Derek Carr loves garbage time. He didn't really get to prove anything today with that. But it's probably not a bad stash. It's not a guy you're going to want to play, but bye weeks are going to start coming up. We've been having like 2 teams on bye. Pretty soon here we're going to have 4 and 5. So you're going to have less people. So yeah, maybe you want to take a stab at someone like that.
I'm still of the belief that Martavis Bryant has like unending potential. Like I still think he could be like one of the better wide receivers. Like he has that talent. He just needs the opportunity or not to be an idiot in an offense. I'd love to see him go to Green Bay because I think he could be an actual talent. That's why I'm like, he was a good wide receiver. He finds. I mean, when he was hit the 3 times today, he did drop a one like 2 weeks ago that should have been a touchdown, but he finds huge openings. He's fast. He's tall. He's long.
Yeah, I don't think
he typically has good hands. I don't know. He's got talent.
Yeah, I don't think it's been a talent or like a skill issue with him. I think it's all been mental and just like trying to figure it all out that way. But
could be Josh Gordon.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's move on to the Vikings playing the Eagles. Vikings hold on for a 23-21 win. What do you got?
Sleight of hand is my single syllable here.
Ooh.
I think both of these teams are actually pretty average, but tricking us into thinking they're good because of last season they were in the NFC Championship game. Neither one of these teams have been impressive this year. I know the Packers haven't either. People are yelling at me, whatever. I just don't think either one of these teams have been that impressive. I think the Eagles will get much better because I think Carson Wentz still has to work his way back into that offense. But I still am of the belief that the Vikings will win less than 10 games, even with this win added on to it this year. I just don't think they're good. Sleight of hand. They're tricking us. This is a trick.
In Philly, and I don't think that we can disagree more on this one because I have another song for my single syllable, but it's just a word. It's hype. Because there was some good hype around this game, being the rematch of last year's NFC Championship
You're getting
game.
tricked.
Well, one, the game was much better this time around. Last year's game sucked. It was terrible.
This game sucked too.
Not really.
It was just a bunch of crappy play.
I disagree. I mean, Thielen looked awesome. Wentz is starting to turn around.
Good.
Ertz looked good. Elshon looks all right.
It just looked sloppy to me when I was watching it. It just looked sloppy.
Anyway. Despite the records, I actually like both of these teams. I like both quarterbacks. I like that Elshon is back and playing. He looks healthy. People forget he's actually a really good receiver when he's healthy. Problem is he's just not always that healthy.
Plays on my team.
Thielen and Diggs, man, Cousins is continuing what Keenum did. He's making them both fantasy relevant every single week. I'd like to see Dalvin Cook back. I'd like to see the offense be able to play with their actual top running back. They're ranking dead last right now in rushing yards per game, so that kind of sucks. But I think both of these are playoff teams. I think if it wasn't for the Rams, this would maybe be a potential NFC Championship game. I think you're not giving these teams enough credit.
The Vikings, no, the Eagles will be good. The Vikings they're not that good. I mean, they have everybody there besides the Dalvin Cook, who didn't look that good when he was there. Their offensive line just isn't good.
Yeah.
Secondary's being a little bit more exposed at this point, and they lost to the Bills. So, I mean, it is what it is.
All right. You win any debate when you say they lost to the Bills. I take everything I said back. You can have that one. Let's go on to the Cardinals beating the 49ers 28-12. Rosen gets his first dub. What do you got here?
My single syllable here is assassins. So I have another thought on like fantasy and how I made that comparison a week or two ago. So we put numbers on, this is in regards to daily fantasy sports. So we put numbers on these guys, And kind of like when you put a hit on a guy for like so much money, it's like bigger the target. Like, okay, you kill the president, you get 100,000, or if you kill
I don't know
Ben,
if you
you
can say
get
that on a
5,000.
podcast.
What?
I don't know if you can say that on a podcast.
Oh, well, I just say it. Not okay. Sorry, I'm not actually talking about Cleveland. But if you kill like a higher person up this list of, I don't know, this list of people they have, the higher the target, the more money it is, and then like the lower, lower tier people are less money, but still guys that you're going after. It's crazy how many negative comparisons you can make when it comes to like fantasy football. First it was a slave trade. Now it's like we're treating these guys like they're like we're putting numbers on their heads. We're putting numbers on their heads, and we're the assassins targeting these guys.
Yeah, it's bounty
for a
gate,
certain
man.
amount of money. It's crazy.
And you're so right, because let's say you spend 8,000 FanDuel dollars on your quarterback and he ends up having a terrible game, and someone that's 6,300 is better. You are even more pissed. Your level of pissed goes with how much money you put onto that guy. If your bargain player doesn't produce, you're not even all that mad about it. But when your stud doesn't produce, you're like, okay, asshole. That's how it ends. Like, you are just pissed at that guy.
These guys are just objects to us. I love it.
Oh, they are.
We're objectifying them. That was nothing about the game. I just don't care about it.
Well, I picked up on that, and you're going to like mine too, because my instant reaction to this is TWD. Just a reminder to all you out there, if you're listening on Sunday, The Walking Dead returns tonight. I'm still a whole season behind, so if you're hitting us up on Twitter at LoadedBox, no spoiler alerts, please. You heard it here first.
I'll be watching it.
DJ's going to end up spoiling it for me anyways. So.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we got one game left, and it's the Rams who beat the Seahawks 33-31. What do you got?
My single syllable here is over. If the Rams or the Seahawks separately are playing in a game, especially against each other, but separately as well, bet the over. The secondary for the Rams isn't that good.
Yeah, what happened there? Holy cow.
They're just not that good. I just don't think they are just not that good with Peters and getting beat all the time, and they have some injury problems going on back there. And with their offense being so good, teams need to keep up. So they're going to be airing the ball out, so it's just going to be points. Seahawks stink, but they were able to stay in this by just throwing the ball around. And they ran really well, which was weird. I was surprised by that.
190 yards.
Yeah. And same goes for fantasy. Play all the guys on both of these teams that are fantasy relevant. So Tyler Lockett had a hell of a game today.
Yep.
Did Baldwin even exist today? I did not hear his name.
Doug Baldwin had one catch for 1 yard on one target.
So Baldwin, so I was right. I didn't even look it up. I just thought he didn't exist today. But a lot of guys had great games in this game. I know Cup went out with a concussion protocol, and Brandon Cooks is dead.
Yeah.
So he'll probably not be in your lineups forever because he's dead. But if anybody else, Robert Woods, all those guys, obviously Todd Gurley, just any wide receiver that's like a top 3 wide receiver on the Seahawks or the Rams at this point, throw them out there because they're just going to be lighting it up. It's a freaking show.
That's all I was going to say, and I didn't have a title for my instant reaction here, but it was going to be about those receivers because, like you said, Brandon Cooks went out into a concussion protocol. Cooper Kupp I think he was concussion too, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So, if you own Robert Woods, pay attention deeply to that, because each week with Robert Woods, you're probably like, okay, I want to start him, but I'm a little bit nervous either about the matchup or I have other guys that have juicy matchups. Well, Robert Woods, if either of those guys are going to miss time, Robert Woods basically becomes a must start because you want to start him already the way it is on that team. But if those two guys are going to be hurt or maybe not even 100%, Robert Woods, in my opinion, is a great player to be having in fantasy right now.
Even with those guys, Robert Woods is a monster. He's putting up 100 yards every game. He'll be doing nothing. I've been paying attention because I have him on a bunch of teams. He'll be doing nothing, and then he'll have a 30-yard pass.
Yep.
And then he'll have a 30-yard catch, and then another 30-yard catch. Next thing you know, he has 90 yards and 3 catches, just because they're focusing on Cooks, and then he runs so many routes across the middle that with those guys that are focusing on the outside, he just comes wide open, and it's like they run this offense so perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
And so they start going to these outside guys, and then Robert Woods finds his way across the middle wide open. He's getting he's going to get 100 yards a game. I think you have to start him and the other two every week if they're playing.
Those receivers literally, I was watching that game last Thursday when they played the Vikings. It's like they just take turns. Like
I'm so angry. I have to watch the Packers be so incompetent on offense with the best quarterback ever, and then you have this team running guys all over the place and dominating.
Oh, like I said, how the Dolphins basically all their good plays come off of gimmicks. You get to watch the Rams and you're like, football teams can do this? Like that's how an offense looks?
Like, I enjoy it. Like I'm pissed, but it's awesome.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I watch a thing that people refer to as football from noon to 3, and then from 3 to 6 I see like something that just blows my mind every single week. It's unbelievable.
I mean, the concept is crazy. The concept of running like the play actions with guys crossing over the field is like way over McCarthy's head. The fact that they like, hey, I can run a play action with my best guys on the field and then run crossing routes to guys all over the field and throw outside, and guys are going to come open because my scheme is that good. It's just way over McCarthy's head. Like he's just running the same plays from 2005.
Oh yeah, no, that's they're a fun offense to watch. I would love to be a Rams fan right now. I'm just getting sad now.
I want Sean McVay to be the Packers head coach because they would score 7,000 points a game.
Yeah, that'd be fun to pair him with Rodgers. That'd be insane. Yeah. Well, I think that's all we got. As always, tweet any questions you may have for us on Twitter. We're found at Loaded Box. Check out our website, loadedboxpodcast.com. Our next episode will be back midweek for our Week 6 NFL and Fantasy Football Preview Pod. We're available in iTunes by searching Loaded Box. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. With that, DJ, send us away.
Bye! Was that noise at the end?